Carly will confirm that the live stream is going.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not as
instantaneous.
It's a whole process to live stream.
Okay, live stream is now working.
Okay, very good. Okay, Vice Chair DeMember, we are live.
Okay, welcome everyone to the February 15th Heritage Richmond Hill meeting. The afternoon's meeting is electronic meeting being held pursuant to section 238 3.3 of the Municipal Act 2001. Please note that Karen, Councillor Silovitz, has had to extend her regrets to this afternoon meeting. So as Vice Chair, I will chair the meeting. We have also received regrets from Chair Committee Member Bob Berube, and we have received a note from Committee Member Natasha Kwan to indicate that she is logging in at a bit late because of that work commitment. The public had the opportunity to submit written correspondence regarding agenda items by email to the clerk's office. All written correspondence received by 12 noon p.m. Noon yesterday would have been included on the agenda, but there were none received. The public also had the opportunity to apply to appear as electronic delegation, either by video conference or by telephone by 12 noon p.m. Yesterday, but there was also none received. As Vice Chair of the committee, I will now call the meeting to order. Okay. So I've welcomed everyone. The meeting has been called to order at 3:02 p.m. I would like someone to move the adoption of the agenda. Nancy? And I guess Agnes seconded, and everyone else. Okay. So are there any additions to the agenda? Anything that anyone wants to include? Any comments? So it's received as presented. So I guess, do we vote, Ryan?
Through the Vice Chair, yes, that's correct.
Everyone vote approve of the agenda? Okay, thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Anyone have?
Sorry, through the Vice Chair, if you can just announce the result of the vote.
Oh, the result. Everyone voted in favor of the agenda. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Okay. This is my first time doing this, so bear with me. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Anybody? Okay, I see that there are none. So we can proceed to the adoption of the previous minutes. Item 4.1, the minutes of the Heritage Richmond Hill meeting, HRH number 01-24 held January 25th, 2024. Are there any questions to do with the minutes? Have you read them? Okay, so then we can move that the minutes of the Heritage Richmond Hill meeting, HRH 01-24 held January 25th, 2024 be adopted. Can I have someone to move? Joanne, a seconder, Barbara. All in favor of the minutes? Anyone not in favor? The minutes have been accepted and approved. There are no delegations. Item 5, there are no delegations today. So we can move to agenda item 6, scheduled business. 6.1, it'll be a summary of Heritage Richmond Hill role as a municipal advisory committee, a presentation by Pamela Vega, urban design and her heritage planner. And note that this is about a 15-minute presentation. Do I need someone to move that they be accepted?
Through the chair, we can do that after the presentation.
After, okay. So if Pamela would like to put her, she did it. Okay, thank you, Pamela. Go for it.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Chair. So in light of all the designation recommendations that the committee will be reviewing in the coming year, City staff would like to provide a brief refresher on the roles of HRH as well as heritage staff. Next slide, please. So the role of HRH is defined by Section 28(1) of the Ontario Heritage Act, which states the committee can advise and assist council on matters relating to Part 4 and Part 5 of the Act. Heritage matters that require consultation with the Heritage Committee include the designation of properties and districts, alterations to designated properties, a demolition of designated properties, repealing designation bylaws, listing properties on the register, and entering into easements or covenants with heritage property owners. These recommendations are made by reviewing applications specifically through a heritage lens. Committee members may ask heritage staff questions related to any of the items on the agenda, may ask for clarification, or may ask for staff's opinion on a matter. Once the committee's recommendations or comments reach council, council can look at the issues from a broader perspective. For example, taking into account social, economic, and environmental concerns, and make a final decision taking all of these factors into account. To help make the recommendations to council, HRH reviews reports written by city staff that contain information on the application being reviewed. Should HRH not agree with the recommendations provided in the staff report, they have the ability to revise the wording of the recommendation or come up with a new recommendation. Staff from the clerk's office who attend all HRH meetings will be able to assist with wording any new recommendations. It is important to note, though, that HRH can only provide recommendations on Part 4 and Part 5 matters. As a committee, they cannot make recommendations on a development application unless it relates directly to a Part 4 or a Part 5 matter. They also cannot make recommendations related to archaeology, as the matter falls under Part 6 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Finally, HRH cannot direct staff to undertake actions and cannot refer items back to staff, as this may only be done through council. Next slide, please. City staff attend every meeting of HRH, but are not committee members themselves. They are here to provide HRH with knowledge and professional advice on current cultural heritage preservation practices, specifically through the lens of the Ontario Heritage Act, as well as the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada. The staff will provide information in the form of staff reports and presentations, and this will help inform the committee's consideration of recommendations to council on heritage matters. They can also answer questions that committee members may have on items on the agenda. Staff are also happy to discuss heritage and HRH related matters outside of HRH meetings. Should a committee member have a question about a specific item or would like clarification on a topic prior to the meeting, they may reach out to the heritage planner by phone or email, and I'll provide the contact information at the end of this presentation. And aside from assisting HRH, heritage staff also review development applications for cultural heritage concerns and work with development applicants to conserve cultural heritage resources that may be on the property. This includes archaeological concerns, as well as any potential impacts to any adjacent heritage properties. While these matters would not come to HRH, if they do not require an application under the Ontario Heritage Act, the committee will be involved should any demolitions or alterations be proposed for a designated property, or if the property is being developed, being considered for designation or listing on the Heritage Register. Next slide, please. And in terms of the designation strategy, staff are planning to recommend approximately 35 properties for designation. These will be done in batch form, meaning that up to 15 properties will be brought forward at the same time. There will be 3 batches, with the first coming forward next month, the second in June, and the third in September. The intention is to bring each batch forward to HRH, COW, and Council within the same month or early into the following month. The months between these batches will be occupied by research and writing for the subsequent batches, while also administering any statutory processes for the previous batch, making this timeline a crucial one to follow. These dates are critical in order to meet the timelines imposed by the province, and they're also critical because of the amount of time required for staff to complete the evaluation reports and staff reports. Any alterations to these dates may impact subsequent steps and have a negative domino effect. Next slide, please. And as a recap, HRH has two roles in the implementation of this designation strategy. The first one was in the first stages of implementing the strategy, when the designation subcommittee provided input to heritage staff on the preliminary list of properties being considered for designation. HRH voted members of the committee to form a subcommittee back in May of 2023. And the role of this subcommittee was to look at areas in Richmond Hill that had high importance and provided input to staff regarding notable properties in these priority areas to consider for designation. While they provided information on these properties, they did not make decisions about which properties will be pursued for designation. Next slide, please. This flowchart, which was presented at the last HRH meeting, shows the steps of the designation process and how HRH fits into this process. The steps outlined in red are the steps that include HRH involvement. Staff have taken the information provided by the subcommittee and have undertaken thorough, comprehensive research on these properties to determine which ones meet the provincial criteria for heritage designation, and then narrowed down the list further to approximately 35 properties. These 35 properties were chosen not only due to their high cultural heritage value, but also due to their high risk of being lost. HRH's second role, which will begin next month when the first batch comes forward, is as an advisory committee to council. This role is identified in the second step of this process as staff report to HRH. As you can see, there are multiple steps in the designation process once HRH has made their recommendations to council. Our timelines to designate properties are very tight as a result, meaning that any modifications to these timelines will have a cascading domino effect on the steps that follow. And if you have any questions about this statutory process, please reach out to either the clerk's office or to heritage staff. Next slide, please. So this concludes our recap. Thank you for attention. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So it's now open to any questions or comments. Does anyone from the committee wish to ask any questions or make a comment? Thank you, Pam, for your outline. Councillor Thompson, you can ask your question.
Thank you for acknowledging me. Pamela, thank you very much for the presentation. Obviously, this is my second time through on this one, but I do have one quick question. It has to do with the appeals process. So given the timeline that you're looking at in the batches 1, 2, and 3, so let's just say we have a property with a high risk of loss, but it's owned by a developer that would certainly prefer to go through demolition by decay. I suspect that they'll probably put up an appeal if that happens to be one of the 35 properties that we're looking at. What's the impact? Like, what is the timelines on the appeal? How may that flow into, say, the second batch or things like that? Maybe you could give us a bit more information there.
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. The appeal happens, so there's two ways that a heritage property owner can say that they're opposed to the designation of the property. The first step is the objection period, which happens after council says, yes, we agree, we want to proceed with designation, and a notice of intention to designate is published. So that's the first section, and any appeal or objections would come to council for their review, and then council can then decide whether to proceed with the designation or say, no, we're not going forward with this designation, then the designation stops. The appeal process happens once the designation bylaw is passed by council. And should we receive any appeals at this point, the appeal would be brought to the Ontario Land Tribunal for final review. From my understanding, the OLT is quite busy. So we're not sure how long that appeal process would take to be concluded. But because the notice of intention to designate has already been published, the property is already considered to be designated, so it would still be protected as if it were designated. So we could still apply the property standards that applied specifically for designated properties. We would still have control over any proposed designations that come forward for the property and any proposed alterations that come forward for the property as well.
Right, and thank you. Through the chair, what are the number of days before, like that they have to launch an appeal, like once that decision has been rendered?
So once the passing of the bylaw has happened,
Correct, sorry.
yes. Just to confirm, I believe it's 60 days, but I need to confirm that.
Okay, and then, so that last batch, I would imagine the bylaw will be in a position where that bylaw could certainly be passed prior than 60 days before the end of the year, which I believe we only have until the end of the year to try and register all these properties. So if somebody registers in that last final window, and we don't know how long it's going to be at OLT, as long as it gets registered in that window, I'm assuming that everything will proceed. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the notice of intention really that has the ability to protect a property until the full designation designation process is complete.
Right. So regardless if it takes OLT 18 months or whatever, then that's good. Okay,
That's
those are my questions. Madam Chair, thank you for recognizing me and allowing me to present my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee member Timothy Cheng, you have a question or comment? You're on. Turn on your mic.
Through the chair, excuse me, I just have a question, just to be confirmed. Excuse me, to be confirmed, if for the ones that we did not submit for destination right now, so all the other properties then would not have the opportunity or fall off the list, and they cannot resubmit after 5 years. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
To Pamela.
Yes, through you,
Yes.
Madam Chair. Yeah, so
To follow up, I understand right now there seems to be organizing an appeal to try to extend the deadline of the cutoff from the end of this year for 5 years. Just wonder how far that process is, and how likely is the chance that it would be successful. That's my
sorry.
question.
Yes, sorry.
Do you get my question? Or is my question clear?
Could you clarify? I think I'm not completely sure about what you're asking.
No, I'm just saying that there's an organization, I think, that tried to call together all the municipalities to try to submit an appeal for extending the deadline for 5 years, so that we have the time to process more and not to be so tight. Just wonder how far this process is. Are you aware? And of course, we don't know the result, but how likely you think
So,
it
through you,
might
Madam Chair,
be successful?
Through you, Madam Chair, if I
Am I-
could respond to that,
Yeah.
Timothy, if you don't
Go
mind.
ahead.
Sorry, okay, go ahead. Yeah,
Okay, through you, Madam Vice Chair.
yeah, go ahead, sir.
So we will have to look into this matter about the deadline extension. So currently what we are doing, though, we are proceeding as required, which is we are trying to meet the deadline, which is the end of this year, or we are still presuming that January 1st, 2025 is the deadline. We can't quite speak to this matter currently, but we are looking into it.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you.
Okay, Timothy. Committee member Agnes Parr, you had a question or comment? Turn on your mic.
My apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
My question through you, Madam Chair, is to Pamela Vega. It's regarding the letters of intent to designate. My understanding is that they've either gone out or have gone out. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, they haven't gone forward. So they are sent out once council has passed their motion that the resolution that they want to proceed with its designation.
Okay, so that's not happened as yet then. And at what point that will happen a little bit further down the road then to understand correctly this process?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, so the first batch is coming forward to HRH at the next March meeting. So then it would go to council later on in March. And once that March council meeting has passed, and if council decides to proceed with the designations, at that point is the notices would be passed or would be mailed to the property owners.
So at that point in time, would it be possible to see what the content of the letter is, just for informational purposes, just for our own knowledge at the point in time when it goes out?
It hasn't been a practice in the past for us to do this. We also
Okay.
publish the same information as we mail it to the property owners on our website. So that would be a way for the public to also find out that information and find out information about how anybody can object to the proposed designation.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, could I just make one more comment? I just want to pick up from what Timothy was remarking on. I don't know if everybody received this, but I received an email in late this morning. It's related to the extension of the dates for designating properties. I sent an email to Karen and she has forwarded that to Kumal and to Ryan, so they'll get back to us on it.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know, did other people receive that too? That email? Because I received it and I'm guessing Timothy received it. It was an email to municipal heritage committees from this outside organization.
I'll have to check my.
Through the chair, if I may, just to be clear, and this is the call of the chair, but the discussion on I guess external emails is not germane to the topic at hand, to the item.
Okay.
So I sort of advise that we stick to what was discussed on this item. That being said, I will speak with the chair and vice chair regarding what members are referring to, as there is some discussion that needs to be had about what that email contains. So
thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Ryan. Are there any other comments or questions on this item 6.1? It looks like there aren't any, so I would ask that the presentation by Pamela Vega, Urban Design Heritage Planner, regarding a summary of Heritage Richmond Hill's role as a municipal advisory committee be received. Can I have someone make a motion? Councillor Davidson, can someone second? Agnes? Can I have a vote on this item to be received? Okay, thank you. It's anonymous. The item 6.1 has been received. Okay, we'll go to the next agenda item, 6.2, an overview of Heritage Richmond Hill meetings, the approach, format, and process, a verbal update by Ryan Ban, Deputy City Clerk. Ryan, can you want to go ahead?
all right, thank you, Chair. So this presentation here is just to talk about how we can ensure that, due to the 10 to 15 properties that will be coming forward, as Ms. Vega brought forward in terms of in March and June and September, to make sure that our meetings are effective and efficient. So what this topic is about is what we call the consent agenda approach. And if you can go to the next slide, please. We'll just kind of give you a background on this and then what that means, what this means for meetings, as well as what we would request committee members to do when they go through the staff reports. So next slide, please. So as Ms. Vega has brought forward, staff have discussed this designation strategy, and the 10 to 15 properties that will be coming up to HRH starting in March. So a typical meeting, as we have done in the past, where there may be a small number of items, is that as each property comes up as an item, the chair would ask, for a motion to receive or accept staff recommendations, and we would go through them one at a time. So in consultation with the chair and vice chair, staff have recommended that for those 3 meetings where the 10 to 15 properties will come forward, we're going to use what we call a consent agenda. What this means is that the committee members, we would like them to select and identify only those properties that they have questions and have a need for further discussion beyond staff recommendations. So without putting words in Heritage staff's sort of mouths here, each staff report that will be brought forward in March will likely be to designate a property. So if committee members are happy with that recommendation and they have no questions about perhaps the content of the staff report, and they have nothing that would require further discussion, is that they would not ask any questions. So they accept staff recommendations, and staff recommendation would go forward. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So again, the purpose of a consent agenda is to make sure that we streamline the meetings to be as efficient as they can be, that the time spent by committee is to raise questions and bring comments that are needed for further discussions. So again, all other items where the committee is satisfied with the staff recommendations, which for all intents and purposes will be to designate a property, they would have no questions, and we would adopt the staff recommendations in one motion. So if there's 10 items on here, staff or committee members may identify some things that they would like to have more questions on and ask staff, but everything else would just be adopted again on consent. So committee members are happy with the recommendations and everything would pass that way. So next slide, please. So in order to ensure that the consent agenda approach is successfully used, and again, to ensure that the meetings are as efficient and effective as they can be, staff are highly encouraged the following. So we know that clerks will publish the agenda, which would contain all staff reports 1 week prior to the meeting. And as committee members are aware, we send an email to all of you stating here's the link to the agenda for you to review. So typically speaking, that is available the Thursday, afternoon prior to the meeting the following week. So for each staff report, there is a contact name with an extension that you can contact if you have any questions. So committee members are highly encouraged to read the staff reports before the meeting, and importantly, to contact the staff member that is listed in the staff report if they have any questions, if they want any clarification of what's contained in the staff report, anything that any comments that they may want to make to staff. So we recommend you do this prior to the meeting. So this basically will ensure that committee members are satisfied with the staff recommendations regarding the staff reports and the heritage designations prior to the meeting. Again, it's not to say you cannot ask questions at the meeting, but again, knowing that there are 10 to 15 properties, and if every committee member has similar questions, I think that they should be in the staff reports. And for this first batch, I think staff will start to understand the concerns or comments that committee members may have as we go forward. Next slide, please. So how does this work? So firstly, I will say that if there are any delegations for the staff reports, so, a property has been identified and perhaps the owner wants to speak, or someone who's interested in it, these items will automatically be pulled for committee members' consideration. What that means is that there's a delegation, absolutely that item will be brought forward for a committee members to make a motion and for further discussion. Okay. I will also say if there is, for some reason, a staff presentation or some verbal update, those items will automatically be pulled for committee's further consideration. So, assuming that there are no delegations, or after all delegations are heard, at the scheduled business part of the agenda, which you see there is number 6, the following will happen. And if we go to the next slide, please. So the chair will ask the committee members to identify any items that they would like to discuss further. So again, if there are 10 items and committee members want to speak to, let's say items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they would raise their hand and say, hey, these are the items that we would like to discuss further. So committee members can raise their hands and the chair will then, ask which items you would like to discuss further. For all other items that are not identified, which would generally mean that committee members are satisfied with staff recommendations, they do not need to identify those items because it wouldn't be for further discussion. Next slide, please. So after all the items have been identified, so in my example, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, we know that 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 committee members are happy with staff recommendations and they would go on consent. So the chair at that point in time will ask for a committee member to move a motion to adopt the staff recommendations in all of the other agenda items. So again, that would be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The chair will call the vote. And then after that is done, items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 will be brought forward individually for further discussion. So that is it for my presentation. Carly, if you can go to the next slide, please. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I just have one comment. Ryan, can you send a copy of those slides to the committee? Because then we can have them at our fingertips to review again.
Through the chair, absolutely. We will send actually both presentations to
great.
committee members after this, after the meeting.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for Ryan from the committee members? Agnes, would you like to go ahead?
Through the chair, I have one comment, Ryan, on one of the screens. It said something about asking questions to staff or to the subcommittee members. My own preference would be is if anybody has questions, if they direct them to the staff rather than, that's my own preference, but I did notice that in there. So if I can have your thoughts on that, please, and thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. So yeah, absolutely. Please contact the staff. Again, part of the reason why we had this subcommittee there is to some degree, or the subcommittee did help to identify the items or the properties, right? But it is staff that are writing the staff reports. They will be the experts in terms of what is contained. Mm-hmm. And yes, we would ask that you contact the staff contact person that's listed on the staff report. I imagine it is likely to be Ms. Vega. I mean, in terms of who will be writing them, but yeah, please contact who's on there.
Okay. Are there any other committee members that would like to ask a question or make a comment to Ryan? It looks like there aren't any. So I will ask that the verbal update by Ryan Ben, Deputy City Clerk, regarding an overview of Heritage Richmond Hill meetings, the approach, format, and process be received. Can I have a motion? Can I have from Agnes and seconder Councillor Dick Davidson? All in favor? I mean, could I have a vote for it? Looks like we're all in, Natasha, are you in favor? I can't see your hand. Where is she? She's, okay, we're all in favor? It's been carried. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Ryan, for a good presentation. I guess that's everything, Ryan, so I should ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting? Councilor
Yeah, correct.
Davis and seconder Nancy, all in favor to adjourn the meeting? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and thank you for your patience with me for chairing this for the first time. Thank you very much.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you, Barbara. Good.
Bye.
I'm glad it wasn't a really heavy meeting. Anyway, I guess that's everything, Ryan. We can say goodbye now.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. We'll see
Thank
you
you,
in a month.
everyone attending. If you're driving anywhere,